And with me here now to discuss the year in review is CoinDesk Markets Team's managing editor, Brad Keoun. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Keoun. You're going to be breaking out the Salon 2002 this evening or tomorrow evening? I think you said.
No, I tend to stick to the more value buys, like champagne adjacent winemaking regions. Burgundy, Alsace, Loire. Yeah. I'm a value buyer when it comes to wine. I actually find that there's nothing like the poverty of a journalism career to really enhance the palate. When you grow up on the good
that's
stuff.
That's one thing that we have that in common, Galen. And so I raise a glass to you.
Indeed, yeah, to another bubble year in 2022. What do you think? Should we raise a glass in the metaverse? I gather DCG is going to be hosting a party for a virtual ball drop. Maybe we can raise a virtual glass of bubbly. I don't think it'll be as satisfying, and I'm not sure it's safe to drink while you're wearing a virtual reality headset. Although that won't be necessary for Decentraland, I guess.
Also, my 12-year-old could probably handle that, but
okay. So your 12-year-old will go in your place. You'll be watching the fireworks in Austin. Yeah, I have no idea whether there's anything like that even happening in Boston. I sort of hope there isn't. So what do you think? 2021 highlights. What's the we just watched sort of a bunch of them roll by. What's the biggest in your mind? What stands out?
I guess a couple things. Number one, just watching that video and thinking about what people who are more Bitcoin focused might think about sort of the wide array of tokens and comments from people, and the Ripple guy and the Tesos, and it really was. Teso's obviously not a huge story for 2021.
Yeah,
but
it was a year of altcoins, but not either of those two.
Right. We have Polygon. I think Doge, SHIB.
Right.
If you kind of went back to this time last year, nobody was talking about any of that stuff. And even though it was kind of happening, it was happening. People were working on it in the skunk works. And it's just a reminder of, crypto markets are so unpredictable, and this industry is moving so fast, and stuff that wasn't even really on most people's horizons ends up being the talk of the year. Yeah. And I think that's
it's interesting, how that has really played out, I think, on a kind of a calendar year basis. If you look at like the end of 2020, you had this very strong run for Bitcoin. Altcoins, maybe if you consider Ether an altcoin, that was perhaps the only one that was really in the conversation. And you look at 2021, and it's Solana, Avalanche, and Luna. That's the story of the year. And if you sort of if you weren't invested in one of them, I think you're probably looking back on where you went wrong, where you missed it. And I think it's got to play in, especially with the way it has kind of gone with the calendar year. It's got to. I feel a sense that there's a potential for like a kind of a cyclical shift, right? You sort of looking at 2022, what is going to be the next, the next new altcoin to occupy those spots? Is it going to be something DeFi 2.0? Is it going to be some new meme coin? Something that perhaps, takes hold in one of the emerging markets, like Brazil or India, for example. I think investors have to be asking that question. And then I think it comes back to like fundamentally a kind of a question of like, in a way, are large investors or small are going to be in the driver's seat for 2022? If it's smaller investors, I think you might see any number of things happen. But if it's larger investors, then you might really see a kind of a cyclical shift back to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Again, trying to go back and put myself back in that mentality of, what I was thinking about in early 2021, or what we were writing about, what we were talking about. And it was about, investors in traditional markets diversifying into Bitcoin as getting off zero, they talked about. And it seems like here we are at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, and people are thinking about wanting to have a diversified crypto portfolio. Right? Because it's
I think
you don't know what's going to
move beyond that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, where that, I mean, and honestly, that narrative has sort of shriveled on the vine, hasn't it? Like, we've been talking about when are the large allocators going to allocate a small percentage to crypto? When are you going to see true institutional participation, and how much of a difference is that going to make? I don't think it's happening, and I yet at any in any really meaningful way. I think sort of large. Faster moving, more nimble, large, what we would consider large investors in crypto are the ones that are leading the market still. And yeah, that I think has played out. The tail of the tape in 2021 tells you that because of that diversification of crypto, right? Diversification beyond Bitcoin and Ether. Maybe that'll change in 2022. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with Bitcoin specifically, I mean, it really, I'm just going to fall back on one of my talking points. It is one of the most fascinating things that humans have ever invented. It really is. I mean, it absolutely has a place. It's earned its place in history, and not just in financial and monetary history, but period. I mean, it penetrated to the public consciousness. It got even further in that in 2021. And it has a way of defying expectations, both on the upside and the downside. People were talking about $100,000 Bitcoin this year, and here we are, we made it to the all-time high of 69,000, and now we're down at 50,000. I don't think people could have, predicted all of that. No way.
Let's leave aside my naive predictions, and let's talk about my naive hopes. And one of my fondest naive hopes is that we can leave behind the stock to flow narrative in 2022. What a shallow and what a serious bit of chart crime that is, and my hope that as sort of people who are interested in Bitcoin and interested in making the case both financially, technologically, and in all the dimensions that you described, Brad, can we move beyond that sort of that kind of monkeying around with numbers and naivete, and get to a point where we can actually talk about things that actually have a sense of how markets work. I certainly hope so, and perhaps ending the year below 50,000 will really be the nail in the coffin of that one, right?
I think I'm maybe even more cynical than you are, Galen. I mean, I start with no human knows what tomorrow brings. I mean, there are people who may be better at predicting the future, but nobody knows what tomorrow brings. Nobody could have predicted 2020. Nobody could have predicted 2021. And to me, the stock to flow model, it's pretty far off track at this point in time, but who knows what tomorrow brings, and who knows if it's any worse than any of the other models that humans make all the time to predict the future.
That's right. No, that's a very good point. It's as good as anything else out there. That's right. Yeah. Well, so I don't know your thoughts then. Like BTC dominance, 40% now versus 70% at the start of 2021. What direction is that going in 2022?
That's a really good question. Once again, for my last comment, Bitcoin seems to take off when nobody's really expecting it, and it's the law of large numbers. I mean, Bitcoin's still, by far the biggest cryptocurrency, about $900 billion market cap. Here we are at the end of 2021. And, a 20% increase in Bitcoin is worth a lot in terms of Bitcoin dominance ratio percentage points. So everything else can moon a lot on its own. But, when the big 800-pound gorilla starts moving, you better get out of the way. And you can see those numbers pop up pretty fast.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think it's sort of it'd be unwise to count Bitcoin out, but I do think that there's a lot of room for interest in some of the things that have emerged in 2021. I have a lot of confidence in the growth of new layer ones, including the networks that have made 2021 their kind of standout years, and also I think looking ahead to perhaps new layer one Ethereum alternatives that may emerge. I think DeFi is actually like kind of tremendously underbought right now. And you look at what's happening there, it's still in a way the most interesting things in crypto are happening in the DeFi context. And so what will 2022 bring for that? I think the DeFi 2.0, as poorly defined as that is, there is a kind of a second generation of decentralized finance projects emerging that have new ways of doing things, just as much as kind of Uniswap had a new way of approaching to the DEX problem, right? So I do think we're going to see interesting new projects and coins to look at in 2022. But in terms of whether they will kind of take hold of momentum the way alts have in 2021. There are so many factors involved in that. I think many of them actually are on the macro scale and highly unpredictable. It would be very foolish to kind of turn your back on Bitcoin at this point.
Well, I mean, one thing I think a 2021 story is, Ethereum, they went through this hard fork with the EIP 1559 that where they're burning Ether, the gas fees, and that seriously reduced, the net new supply of Ethereum, and it gave, people an alternative potentially to Bitcoin as the inflation hedge of choice. But what I would also say is nothing really in crypto is even close to Bitcoin in terms of its perception as a potential macro asset. And you look at El Salvador, and El Salvador didn't adopt Ethereum. It would be ridiculous if you saw any of these other sovereigns adopt Ethereum.
Do you think we'll see another country even at that scale?
If they're gonna adopt anything, it's probably gonna be Bitcoin.
Will we see another El Salvador size or larger country adopt in 2022? Another tin pot dictator? Forgive me.
I mean, you may see some of these things that are more driven by the rank and, by the people. I mean, we were just looking at Turkey and the collapse of the Turkish Lira. And I was reading that, searchers are taking off in Bitcoin. It could be that, if people feel like they don't really have a good alternative to their domestic currency, or, maybe they don't have other options.
I agree. Although I think there's a big difference between that and, somebody like Nayib Bukele adopting Bitcoin. I have my deep-seated suspicions, of the motives. And again, we always have to ask that question: who benefits, Bitcoin or the new adopter? Right? Who's benefiting more here, MicroStrategy or Bitcoin? I would say, I think some of these cases, I'm very interested to see that spread. But I think until it does spread and we see, people with a broader set of motives, perhaps adopting Bitcoin, sovereigns with a broader set of motives adopting Bitcoin, we're not going to necessarily be able to say that we're there as a macro asset in the way that you're describing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if people talk about, some people think that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, or that's like a narrative out there, which I think, those of us who are covering the business, we sort of understand, this is a real thing. It's a technological movement.
It's beyond that, right?
There's definitely a certain element to when did you get in? Right? Like if you got in super early, you're pretty rich right now.
Let's hope we put that one to rest in 2022 as well, right? Because I feel like anybody
adopted Bitcoin,
there's a long way to go.
El Salvador would be super rich, one of the richest countries in the world. So
anyway, I think we got to wrap up. They're telling me it's time. We could go on here. Brad, maybe we need a longer format.